do you think about this format?
I think it'll really test different strengths of different players. Just for example, we have two players who we really know today playing in today's groups, Life Coach and Firebat. And what's really interesting about these two players is they're kind of on the opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of how many different classes they use in tournaments. Life Coach is really known for only bringing 4 or 5 different classes, 4 or 5 even different archetypes. He plays pretty much mid-range hunter, mid-range paladin, patron warrior, handlock, and druid. And outside of that, maybe you get the odd mech mage, maybe an odd mech warrior, but nothing really else. Firebat is known for playing just about every single class. Firebat, especially in the first ever league tournament, the Kingwin Pro League, he was the only player in the group stage to bring all 9 classes in the group stage. So definitely a different dynamic, and definitely something I think will give Firebat an advantage in this group.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with that. Being able to be so adaptable, so flexible with your classes. We see that on the screen right now. They're showing some of their deck lists already, so maybe some of the players can take a look at this before they
Oh,
get
wow.
started. That's kind of interesting. Again, we are piggybacking on the Chinese stream from Douyu TV. But yeah, like you said, it's going to be interesting to see if Life Coach can adapt and bring, a different kind of play style with all these different decks. In particular, I mean, Shaman has been one of the weaker classes, but very recently, getting pretty strong with, innovations by Rainet and Luffy's, bringing out some aggro Shaman decks. So we will see if, Life Coach can adapt and, play the Smork style.
Right. We just saw our first match of the day is going to be Firebat versus Life Coach, and already we're seeing very interesting decks. A lot of, I would say, pretty anti-control, especially with the Mill Rogue. Mill Rogue is a deck that kind of suffers against aggro, but against control, especially decks like Control Warrior, it can be fairly good. In addition to that, Reno Warlock and a very, very taunt-heavy Druid. What do you think about this particular lineup?
This is so interesting to me. It's not too surprising to see the Mill Rogue. It's actually getting pretty strong these days. And obviously he's been playing a lot on stream as well. Arena Warlock is obviously a strong deck recently, just really hard to get by, and kind of just throws a wrench into people's kind of game plans. And as you kind of refine those decks, make the best of those one-off slots, you can really refine the deck and make it better than it once was in the beginning, when people were just kind of experimenting with it in the beginning. Obviously, this Druid deck is very interesting to me as well. Not very Firebat-esque, I should say. We have for some reason, it got unmaximized. Not sure why, guys. Douyu TV giving advertisements out. Sorry about that. Alright, we're back. And, yeah, so very interesting to see Firebat play that. I do not believe he's playing Life Coach in his first match, though. I believe he's playing Zoro.
Is it Zoro? Okay, in that case, okay, we do see Zoro. Zoro, of course, is the player who qualified for BlizzCon this year, and unfortunately, he didn't really advance too far. I think he got to the round of 8, where he was defeated ultimately. Zoro, he's a very standard player, I would say. To BlizzCon, he brought a very standard combo druid, he brought a very standard secret paladin, and he brought a very standard hunter, so nothing too out of the ordinary. From
Yeah.
him, we'll see another fairly interesting lineup. Again, he's bringing 2 of the same decks he brought to BlizzCon, Combo Druid and Secret Paladin. But the interesting one here is the Reno Warlock, a deck that just really, you can put like 30 different cards in it, and they can all be 30 different cards, from Firebat's Reno Warlock to Life Coach's Reno Warlock to Zoro's Reno Warlock. Everyone's going to be bringing something different. And I'm interested to see like the different variations the Chinese players will be having on this deck. For example, Ragnaros, Twisting Nether, not particularly 2 common cards we see from Western Reno Warlocks.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, everyone has their own real take on it. I'm not sure if there's a huge difference between Western and Eastern Reno Warlocks per se. It could be just kind of individual things. His doesn't look too crazy to me as far as what I've seen on ladder and here and there in tournaments. I just kind of laugh when I see the entire both columns just completely filled up with cards, just all the way down. It's kind of hard to put that on the screen too when you're streaming. Just to throw that out there. By the way, they are playing at a site. All the Chinese players at a specific site, while most of the, if not all of the Western players are going to be playing just from their houses. There was an invite extended, but people thought it was a bit of a hassle to fly all the way out to China. But yeah, just going over it again, 8 players from China who all qualified, by the way. The qualifications, I casted the majority of those, 6 out of 8 of those weeks. And what happens is Within those qualifiers, there were 2 players who were invited, 3 players who were qualified from a pro qualifier, and 3 players who qualified from an open qualifier. The pro qualifier was about 50 people, open qualifier around 500. So everyone more or less gets a chance to get in there. I believe Zoro was from the pro qualifier, and he qualified in week 2. And in those qualifiers, again, they had, after qualifying for the qualifier, those 8-man qualifiers were basically similar format as today. They had to use all N classes. So basically, if they won in the round of 8, they didn't get to use those classes in the round of 4. And if they won the round of 4, they didn't get to use those classes in the final rounds. And what we typically saw was players saving Shaman until the end, kind of gambling that their finals opponent wouldn't have, or would, anyone who advanced to the finals would get there having not used Shaman yet, because it was one of the weaker classes. Going to be a bit different today, as not only is it round robin, so you can use your classes whenever you want, but Shaman isn't as weak as it once was as we get into the game. Firebat streaming from, I believe, the Archon house. It's going to be Rogue versus Druid.
I believe this is a matchup that Firebat certainly didn't want. It seems like Druid is one of the classes that can really burst a Mill Rogue out of the game. If you give your Druid opponent his entire hand, at some point in the game, he's gonna have Force of Nature, Savage Roar, and you're just not gonna be able to win. I honestly think this matchup is like close to unwinnable, to be honest.
Yeah, I've seen situations where the Mill Rogue has in fact found a way to mill the Druid, but you're right, it's extremely difficult. Strangely enough, you would think that the aggro Druid would be better against Mill Rogue, but if you can find a way to kind of mill their entire deck when they get the Fel Reavers out, it's
right.
Yeah, it actually ends up being better matchup for the Rogue in that instance. But yeah, like you said, that's neither here nor there. This is not aggro Druid, and it's going to be really difficult for Firebat here.
Right. He seems to be dealing with the board pretty well. I mean, this is as best as you can kind of hope. Maybe an SI agent later on would have been nice, but he knows by queuing up into the Druid that he's not going to have a good time. Zoro also is not clued in at all about what kind of deck that Firebat is bringing. So I think he'll have a happy surprise when Cold Light Oracle comes down.
Yeah, absolutely. He doesn't know what he's playing against quite yet. Obviously, Firebat hasn't been able to develop anything onto the board until now, when he plays the Deathlord, and you see Zoro's eyes light up just a little bit. But this deck isn't so crazy now, not so crazy to see it, at least on ladder. Maybe in tournaments it's a bit strange, but we'll see how Zoro kind of responds to this from here on out.
Right, so this deck has also been performing decently in tournaments over the past few days. At DreamHack, I know that Purple's teammate from Gamers Origin went an astounding something like a 6-3 record in the group stages with Mill Rogue in his lineup. So it's not like a completely terrible deck at all.
Yeah, exactly. That was, I believe, Protohype, who was in the BlizzCon. I played him in the 2014 NA Championships last year. But so he's a pretty good player, and obviously on G2. But yeah, the big difference though, however, in that format is that it was last hero standing. So if your Mill Rogue kind of fails a bit, then it's fine. You can move on with your other decks, and sometimes you can kind of throw a wrench in your opponent. Maybe Mill Rogue is their one counter, right? They're playing all super heavy control decks, and you just 3L them. But in this case, Firebat's going to have to find a win with this if he wants to get a win this entire series.
Yeah, we talk about this being a really bad matchup, and we're kind of already discounting it, but it's still okay here. But if we were to assume that he loses this, then he has the Secret Paladin, which I don't believe is a very good matchup. And then he has the Reno Warlock, which might be a little better because the Reno Warlock will tend to keep a bigger hand. Unfortunately, now that Firebat's deck is kind of it's going to be revealed to his opponent, then Zoro will be able to play around being milled with the Reno Warlock, perhaps not tapping as much.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, that's a match that could happen in the future. And really interesting enough, Zoro gets the Ancient of Lore off of that Deathlord, which is probably one of the best cards you're ever going to get off of that, especially because you don't want to be drawing anyway. Your opponent's going to be drawing for you, or drawing your cards for you, excuse me. And yeah, just everything working out for Zoro so far, although Firebat gets a pretty good clear there.
Right. I also have to say that Firebat's hand is not looking too bad at all. I mean, Cold Light Oracle, Shadow Step, and Gang Up are some of the cards that you do want around this type of the game, because sometimes when you don't draw them, then your entire plan goes out. There's really no way to mill your opponent without those Cold Light Oracles in this deck.
Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword, though, right? Obviously, it could be worse. He could just have, gang up, Shadow Step or something like that. But at the same time, if he starts using those Cold Oracles, it's pretty hard to make your opponent, mill some cards right now. He could. It's definitely possible for him to mill right now with those, 6 draws that he's going to be coming in. But at the same time, his opponent was only at 5 cards going in, so he's going to get a lot of options, speaking of Zoro.
Yeah, Zoro, he doesn't seem to be flinching at all at this Cold Light Oracle, which means that he wasn't really surprised. He saw the Death Lord, so he made a pretty good conclusion at that point that it might be just Mill Rogue.
Yeah, definitely. And Firebat not going to commit to using a bunch of Cold Oracles. Recognizes that he's already seen one Innervate, and Druid cards are typically pretty clunky. It's going to be hard for Zoro to kind of just throw away cards out of his hand, and maybe Firebat will be able to make something crazy happen next turn.
Yeah, if Zoro had something like double Piloted Shredder on this turn, for instance, I'm sure he would possibly consider playing that over the Doctor Boom. But Doctor Doom for 1 card is a pretty strong play, especially against Rogue. You're not going to, as Firebat, you're probably not going to want to sap it unless you can burn the Doctor Boom with Cold Light Oracle. And I think that's something that he can consider right now. If he Cold Light Oracles, maybe Shadow Steps, and then draws into a sap, that's definitely a play that he could make. A very strong one indeed.
So I actually don't know the interaction with this. Do you know if there's a Vanish on this turn, which gets killed? If there's only one that gets killed?
What do you mean?
Say Firebat vanishes here, and there's a Doctor Boom and a Boombot on the board.
Right. I think the Boombots get returned and the Doctor Boom gets burned.
Right.
Because when Knife Juggler is summoned or when Sacred Trowel activates, it's always the Doctor Boom that's summoned last.
Right. So this is one of the cards. So it looks like Firebat doesn't need to use the Vanish quite yet. Has 2 in hand, but it's pretty difficult to use that card without using prep. So it's a pretty good turn by Firebat. He is dead to combo, however, but I think he's seen a Force of Nature. So as Emperor Thorson gets milled right there. And speaking of Firebat's hand, Bran Bronzebeard is one of the cards that's made Millrogue a bit better, just because you can have those hugely explosive turns with Bran that just kills your opponent.
Emperor Thorson being burned was actually pretty bad for Zoro. That was actually one of the cards that could help him make this hand less clunky. And now that Zoro has 2 Savage Roars in his hand, at any time that he draws the Force of Nature, it's probably going to be lethal. So Firebat, I think he's going to have to rely on milling those double Forces of Nature as his game plan.
Yeah, definitely. That's that's going to be interesting to see if he decides to go for something like that. Maybe he feels like that could be his only option to win the game. Because again, like you said earlier, this is an unfavorable matchup. So maybe you go for something crazy, like hoping that one of the key cards just gets milled in this instance. Firebat's going to be going with the Healbot and the Death Lord. Not interested in getting the double heal from the Bran Bronzebeard yet. Essentially, this heals for the same amount anyway, unless it gets silenced. So you see Zoro kind of looking at his deck, seeing if maybe he can pick up Force of Nature. He might actually even draw here. Just to guarantee get it, because with the double Savage Roar in hand, it could be a lot of damage.
He's also considering just playing the Savage Roar outright. But the problem with that is you already have an Innervate and you have 2 Savage Roars. So anytime you draw Force of Nature, that's lethal. Whereas now Zoro has to kind of rely on getting a board on the field. He also could consider playing one of his big minions, but the problem with that is if you play a bigger minion and it gets vanished, then because the bigger minion is played last, it will actually just die instead of returning to your hand.
Right. So Zoro getting a pretty good minion off of this, that being the Shredder. He's actually just going to use as many cards as possible, and this is pretty smart. I mean, this board can get vanished, but unless there's extra Cold Lights that come into the hand of Firebat right now, there's not going to be any cards that actually die. So Zoro not going to go for the all-in play of holding on and hoping for a super double combo. And I kind of like this play. I don't know about you. I kind of like this. Just being proactive, not worrying about the cards in this deck. Just saying like, okay, let's put pressure on you, make you use the removal that you have in your deck.
Right. So I'm wondering whether perhaps... Okay, so Firebat, he prioritizes milling his opponent rather than killing off some of the cards on the board, like Ancient of War, for example.
Mm.
He'd rather have his opponent have the Ancient of War rather than Force of Nature.
Oh,
And there's the first one. That's
wow.
so key.
Wow.
Druid of
And
the Claw is also a good burn because it can charge the face as well.
yeah, definitely. That's I think that's really smart by Firebat because he's recognizing that his opponent doesn't have combo. I think there might have been a turn or two here or there where Force Nature might have been lethal. So he's correctly calculated that their Force Nature was in the deck. So yeah, he just didn't worry about the minions on the board because he can always vanish those again. And he's thinking, okay, the ones I want to kill are in his deck. And
Right.
really good play by Firebat, getting the Force Nature there, and not looking to kill the minions on the board, looking to mill the cards out of the deck. Really well played, I think.
Yeah. Also, from Firebat's perspective, he doesn't know that Zoro also has the second Savage Roar in his hand. So if he just burned that second Savage Roar, then it would be hugely beneficial for him because now he knows, okay, there definitely isn't a combo coming on, and he can play a lot more greedy.
Yeah, definitely. That all said, this is no matter what Firebat does, Zoro is able to put a pretty intimidating board on the field as we see right here. Although there is the Blade Flurry, we'll see if Firebat kind of commits to Blade Flurry here. I think he's seen both Force Natures. Is that correct?
I believe only one was burned.
Maybe, but like he could maybe Blade Flurry this and take the 4 damage from the Piloted Shredder in this instance.
Right.
But
So
sorry.
again, Firebat is just prioritizing burning the combo pieces rather than going for like killing off the minions like the Pilot Shredders. In addition, the Pilot Shredders would just death rattle anyway. And oh, I guess both Force of Natures have been burned. I guess you were right. And now this is actually looking really bad for Zoro.
Wow. Yeah, so Firebat looks like he's in prime position to take this improbably. Maybe this matchup isn't as bad as we thought.
Yeah, it's just the key was Firebat. He had a lot of the things that he needed in the right order. He had exactly the right amount of board clears early on to kill off the Azure Drake and any early pressure, and then the rest of his hand was all the milling cards, basically the Cold Light Oracles, Shadow Steps, Gang Ups, and Zoro he was a little unlucky. I have to say he didn't draw into any pieces of the combo early on, or he didn't draw into both pieces of the combo.
Especially considering all the cards that he was getting from Firebat as well. But I don't know. I think Zoro's hand wasn't the worst. He started with a really fast start. Keep in mind, he had the Wild Growth into Innervate Azure Drake. So yeah, I think obviously the Druid is supposed to win this generally, but I don't know. I don't think it's out of the question to say that Firebat kind of outplayed Zoro here.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that was really brilliantly played by Firebat. The keys I feel were prioritizing getting the minions into Zoro's hand and letting him burn spells from his deck rather than killing off minions on the board.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you can kind of see the evolution of how Firebat is playing this because I remember seeing you can look at some VODs of his on YouTube as Firebat takes the first game. Zoro not too happy about it. But you can see some inexperience when he was first starting out with the deck, and now it's just looking really good, really refined play by him. And yeah, he clears his Rogue, and that's out of the way for now. A deck that maybe could have fallen into some trouble, potentially, because it is kind of an out there deck, and able to get it out of the way in the very first game against what appeared to be an unfavorable matchup. Firebat has remaining his Reno Warlock and his kind of rampy Druid. Zoro has Druid, Paladin, and Warlock remaining.
Yeah, I have to say, definitely very impressive from Firebat there. And with his more taunty Druid and with his Reno Warlock, I want to say that he's in a pretty good position, but I have to feel that maybe his taunt Druid is not going to do too well against Reno Warlock. It just feels like the Reno Warlock is the quote-unquote bigger deck. It has more threats, especially with Draxus on the field.
Yeah, it could be the case that Firebat wants to kind of prey on this Seeker Paladin, or maybe, just more aggressive decks in general with the Reno Warlock and the Druid, and this slower Druid. This matchup right here could be very important in kind of determining the match, because obviously Druid can go both ways, depending on the kind of explosive draws that the faster Druid can get, versus the defensive Druid. Whereas, and also the Warlock, like you said, can be a bad matchup for the Druid. So this could be one of
Right.
the times where Firebat's Druid can pick up a win here.
Right. I think this is actually a pretty good matchup. Usually the combo druid is not really well favored against the secret paladin, just because of the amount of pressure that the secret paladin can put in, and also the clunkiness of certain cards like Force of Nature and Savage Roar. But this taunt druid, I think, is going to do pretty well with mind control tech, double BGH, all these defensive minions, especially against this very, very slow start from Zoro. I have to say, this is probably like a in the 10th percentile of starts.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he has, well, Muster for Battle helps quite a bit, especially with the Avenge down. So that basically completely changes the game. If his next play was Dude Redemption or Coghammer, it would have been very, very weak. But so far, I mean, this is looking okay. We'll see if Firebat commits to the swipe or goes for something else.
Oh man, look at that.
Oh,
Harrison
wow.
Jones comes on the field.
Innervate Harrison Jones is pretty good. It's just a 5 mana Ancient of Lore, except you draw even one more card.
Right, and not only that, but you also set up for a really amazing swipe on your turn 4.
Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
you could just play an Ancient of War. That also helps.
That's also something that you could do on turn 4 as Firebat. Zoro has the opportunity to get a lot of cards here, but he would lose out on a bit of tempo doing so. And, playing something like Redemption into Divine Favor, I mean, you get a 1/1 back, so, I mean, are you really getting the value out of that card? I mean, obviously, the Seekers aren't there to provide too much value, but at the same time, it can be pretty good, especially if you get, a Tyrion Redempted, a Shredder Redempted, something pretty good.
Yeah, I don't think Zoro is worried at all about not drawing enough cards out of Divine Favor. I think he's going to be looking at least like 6 cards or so. Well, Firebat going for I would say like a pretty greedy-ish kind of play, going for the mind control tech, where he had a pretty easy swipe there.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see if he uses maybe more of his resources. I'm going to be Coin Innervate into Swipe as well. So he's going to do all of that at the same turn. Just wanted to kind of get some minions on the board as well.
Yeah, that's probably like overall the strongest play possible, especially if you steal the Piloted Shredder, but he's not really too unhappy about this either.
So a bit of
The,
a...
the,
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say like the key of Secret Paladin really is just to get a board coming into the coming into the Mysterious Challenger turn, and not only that, but to force your opponent not to have a board going into his turn 6. Because as long as you can get the Mysterious Challenger avenged, then it's automatically a minion above 7 attack, which you can just BGH. So Firebat looks to be again in a pretty I want to say unlosable position, but then again, Divine Favor can do some magic.
Yeah, there's some crazy stuff that can happen out of Divine Favor. And keep in mind that Firebat doesn't have really any more crazy turns in him. He's used both Innervates. Obviously, he's used it to great value thus far, but he can't kind of rely on having some crazy turns from here on out. Just standard, big Druid turn, just normal stuff. Looks like Zoro's going to go for that Divine Favor here, realizing he needs cards to kind of refuel him, but that's going to give plenty of time for Firebat, though we do see the Mysterious Challenger come in hand.
Right. Zoro, I think he realized that, okay, I might not need this many cards from Divine Favor, but I do need a Mysterious Challenger on turn 6, and that's pretty much the only way I will come back in this game. Challenger on 6, Dr. Boom on 7, Tyrion on 8, and hope my opponent doesn't have the exact answers.
Looks like we have something on the board about the percentages of getting Consecrate, though there's nothing in particular. Firebat has nothing really to do this turn that would kind of, get rid of the Repentance, so he says, okay, whatever, I'm just going to charge the face. I don't need to put this in Taunt because there's a decent chance it's Repentance. And I imagine we're probably going to see the Mysterious Challenger here.
Right. I think the Chinese production, they wanted to put out Consecrate because it was also a card that he was looking for. Even if you Mysterious Challenger here, the opponent can just Hero Power and potentially Savage Roar for the win, or just pretty much just attack the face for the win. Because how much damage is that on board? That's 13 damage. So anything like
just keep
I guess
the Grove.
keep the Grove doesn't protect you from Noble Sacrifice.
Right.
Like you would need that one extra damage in. But swipe, um, another Druid of the Claw would really help. Just a whole host of things.
Yeah, so right now, considering that Firebat can Hero Power Keeper of the Grove, if Zoro plays Mysterious Challenger, Firebat right now with his hand is 1 damage off lethal. Because you said, so 13,
Yep.
yeah, wait, 8,
What?
12, 13, yeah. So I believe it's 1 damage off lethal at the moment. Looks like
Right,
he's
he's
gonna,
just gonna he's gonna test if there is indeed a noble sack, which there is.
yeah, and
And
he can just BGH and then, go from there. So this is, I don't know, this is as over it can possibly get, I think.
yeah, BGH probably wild growth, I guess. But oh well, there's a free hero power that you can fit in to kill the 2/1 defender dude.
Hmm. Yeah, not
And
all analysis here. Just kills the 2-1, hits face for 12, and nothing really Zoro can do. I mean, even if he picks up Consecrate here, he gives initiative to Firebats. So, yeah, I don't see any way Zoro comes back from this as Secret Paladin. Maybe if you were mid-range Paladin, you had a bunch of healing, but yeah, there's no way.
right, no, not really too many defensive cards that Zoro can have in his deck, really. And this game really came down to a combination of Firebat drawing really well, Zoro drawing really poorly, and Firebat bringing a really good counter deck against the Secret Paladin. Just we have one player who's bringing way more traditional decks, but the other player, Firebat, he's bringing like kind of out there decks, and they just happen to be working well. Milrogue probably wasn't the best matchup against Druid, although Firebat played it really well. On the other hand, Taunt Druid is going to be pretty good against Secret Paladin. So, just overall, I have to give it to Firebat over in terms of he played really well. Not only did he play really well, he brought a good lineup of decks.
Yeah, so far the deck choices are working out for him. I mean, we kind of heaped praise on him for the rogue. I don't know if we can do the same here though for this druid. It seems like he just kind of got the right draws, which can happen. Obviously Zoro, not too happy about that, but didn't really get to see the late game in action. Didn't get to see that Kel'Thuzad or Sylvanas or the Ancient of Wars doing work. But in any case, we are going to see the Secret Paladin go against the Reno Warlock. Do you have much experience with these particular classes? I've been kind of straying away from playing Secret Paladin on the ladder.
Right, I've been playing it a bit, but mostly I've been focusing on Reno Warlock. I mean, D2, are you really telling me that you haven't played a lot of Reno Warlock in the last month or so? It's kind of like the hot new deck that we've been getting, and it's
Right.
kind of like the one everyone's been experimenting with.
I went immediately for the Smork Luffy Rain-Ed Shaman deck.
Right, right. I tried that a bit. That was fun, but I have to give it all to the Control lifestyle. It's a really interesting deck. One of every card, and I tell you, it's a nightmare for like sites that have to put up deck lists because not only do you have to make the deck list and it's like a little more time consuming, but you have to like cut and paste the pictures all together
Right, right.
in order to make in order to like paste the deck list on your site. Overall, I have to say that I don't believe that the Reno Warlock is favored in this matchup, especially with Firebat's rather poor draws.
Hmm. Yeah, that's part of the reason
yeah.
why this deck. I was a bit skeptical when this deck first came out, just because you have to put so many cards in the deck that just don't work out at all in certain situations. Just so many specific techie cards in order to get the one of everything, which is why I was skeptical at first. Now I'm kind of growing on the deck. I'm kind of seeing why it can be so powerful. But yeah, definitely at first I was not a big fan of it.
Yeah, it's one of those decks where, you know how like Druid, everyone is around 28 cards, the same deck, and maybe 2 flex card positions, or what's another good example? Maybe even Secret Paladin is a bit like that. I think Reno Warlock is just basically never going that path because even right now, it's about like 10 to up to 15 cards different for every deck list.
Yeah, definitely. And the big thing, one of the big things too, is whether or not players put in 2 of something. Sometimes you see 2 Moltons or something like that in order to kind of get those huge impact cards and kind of gamble that you get them in your hand by the time you have Reno. I believe Firebat has one of every single card in his deck, and does have Reno in the hand. So if ever he's in a bit of trouble, he can just hit the reset button.
Yeah, the problem against oh wow, that's pretty huge seeing that Zoro doesn't have any AoE for that. But generally, the problem with Reno against Secret Paladin is you can either heal or you can clear the board, but you can't do both. And if you Reno on a certain turn, oftentimes the Secret Paladin already has something like 18 or 20 points of damage
Mm.
on the board. So Reno is actually effectively not doing much.
Yeah, I actually ran to a Reno Hunter the other day, and
Very popular in the Asian server right here.
really, okay. Well, it was on the NA server when I played that, and I killed him 2 turns later after I used Reno from 1 to 30. He went from 1 to
Wow.
30, the dream, and then I killed him in 2 turns after that, so didn't really help him out too much. And I was playing mid-range Paladin too with 0 burst, so yeah. Sometimes it doesn't work out too well, but yeah, like you said, sometimes your opponent can get a big board, especially something like Secret Paladin. You know, all those avenge targets plus the blessing of kings can create a huge board, and so that's the worry, like you say. If
Yeah.
Firebat puts up that Reno, and then all of a sudden there's a bunch of things running at him. But looks
Right.
like there's a bit of lag. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's why there's some Reno decks they have Twisting Nether as one of their choice 30 cards in their deck list. And actually, I love how Reno makes cards like Twisting Nether actually viable. Like these cards that you just generally won't play anymore. Twisting Nether, Fugan, and Stalag are found in Reno Warlock sometimes. In fact, Stansifka made rank 1 with that a list, including those 2 cards. Sometimes like Stampeding Kodo, Refreshment Vendor. All these cards that you typically just never see at all in decks are being brought into this into this deck that can utilize 30 different cards.
Yeah, absolutely. Looks like we had a bit of a lag issue with Zoro, potentially even a disconnect fear there. But okay, looks like we're looking from Firebat's perspective now. I guess they're talking about how Zoro has the Mysterious Challenger in hand. I wonder what the issue is here. Maybe Zoro might have disconnected, or the other way around. But oh, looks like Reno was played. This is interesting. So I guess the spectator side on Zoro is kind of bugging out a bit, and Firebat decided to play Reno.
It might be that Zoro is disconnecting right here
Uh,
because we are watching from Zoro's perspective, and the game kind of lagged out from his perspective. But once we switched to Firebat's perspective, it all looked fine and dandy.
yeah, so that could be the case. If there is a regame, I don't. I mean, that game wasn't too much of an outlier in terms of how Secret Paladin goes or how Reno Warlock goes. So I don't know. I wouldn't be too sad about a regame here, as we
Right, I
see.
agree. Like, I think Firebat maybe had a below average draw, but on the other hand, he did get a 4 from the implosion, so that look kind of balances out.
Yeah, that, and he had the Reno in hand to kind of help him get back into the game. I feel like both players had a chance to win that game, so it should work out if they go to another one. Going back to your point earlier about putting all these new cards in the deck just because you want to get one-ofs in each deck, that and the Discover mechanic, having cards you wouldn't normally see in decks because there's not enough space for certain cards to be put in. I'm really liking this expansion so far, just for that fact alone, where cards you wouldn't be able to fit in normal decks, you're seeing a lot more of, and it's really enriching the game, in my opinion.
Right. I think I don't think anyone will disagree with my following statement, but I think it's overall a lot better mechanic than Joust, which felt really RNG based. Whereas Discover, yes, there is a bit of RNG, but it's very controlled RNG. You get to pick from 3 cards, each of which could be pretty decent. And especially with the Discover, there are cards, like you said, that typically wouldn't be put in decks, but they can be very good under certain situations. For example, Jeweled Scarab discovering the elemental destruction, or perhaps my favorite, the Dark Peddler discovering corruption, which is a card that almost no one uses, but at the right times it can be pretty powerful.
Yeah, definitely. If you have no other responses to be able to clear a certain minion. And it looks like we're getting back into the game. It is going to be a restart. By the way, for those of you, excuse me, who are arriving right now, this is Firebat versus Zoro. Firebat is up 2 games to 0. It is Conquest, so Firebat only has to clear his Warlock remaining. And these players do have to play all 9 classes throughout this round robin today. So we are seeing a wide variety of classes. The other 2 players in this group are Life Coach and Blue. Pretty good starting hand for Firebat there with that Zombie Chow.
Oh yeah. Compared to the last game, this is just worlds different, pretty much. Zombie Chow versus Zoro again, who's drawn not that well. Tyrion Forwarding is in his hand, and not really a 2-drop once again. And reducing that Zombie Chow to 1 HP, I think Firebat's okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, basically, you've already gotten rid of 1 card, even if it trades here with a 2/1. That Zombie Chow basically traded for 3 mana and a card, so Firebat, I imagine, is not going to be too sad about that situation. Gonna just tap here, and I imagine he's gonna trade just so that 1/1 doesn't get buffed up. Yeah, seems kind of weird for a 2/1 to be trading to 1/1, but the damage doesn't matter with the Zombie Chow, obviously, because it's just gonna heal back up. And,
right, and it was possible for Muster for Battle to happen, and Firebat would basically just be facing 4 1/1s instead of 3 1/1s.
Yeah, absolutely. So it looks like we're looking at Divine Favor for some reason, but Firebat's able to tap here. Typically, if you tap on 2 and 3 as handlock, or usually it's handlock when that happens, you overdraw a card. But in this case, since he played the Zombie Child, not going to be the case. And Zoro's going to pick up a whole lot of cards. The maximum, I believe, you can pick up without overdrawing. Yeah, so it's going to be 9 cards there. And kind of a weird hand for Firebat. He can play the Hellfire, but I imagine he wouldn't want to kind of waste that card right now.
Right, and with that Divine Favor, Zoro's hand just suddenly went from really not that great to, oh my god, this is awesome, because one of Firebat's unfair mechanics that he has for Warlock is that he can draw extra cards, but Zoro just completely negated it. So Firebat will have to do a couple of more unfair things to get back in this game. Although we do see Void Caller and no Owl from Zoro, we do see Jiraxis in the hand from Firebat, and we do see Shadow Flame, which are all viable options to clear the board. But I think the problem is that Zoro just might have too much, and he might be able to just refill the board every single time that Firebat does go for the board clear.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously we'd see those 2 board clears in hand, but I mean, you don't really want to do it with Jiraxis, speaking of the Shadow Flame, and it's kind of hard to do with the Abuser Sergeant. You could do it with his Void Caller, but what are you going to do after that? It looks like Zoro's going to play a lot of Secrets before he plays the Mysterious Challenger next turn. I was kind of eyeing that Lotheb as something that he could do here. What do you think about this play?
Yeah, I guess what you're referring to is the problem with this play is that if Firebat chooses not to proc that many Secrets, then the Mysterious Challenger will get some extra value. But on the flip side of it, if Firebat decides not to attack, decides not to proc any of these Secrets, Competitive Spirit will go off, and that adds 5 damage and 10 stats to the board, which is something that I'm not sure if Firebat can really deal with that well.
Yeah, that is a lot of stats on the board that Firebat is staring at right now. So in the end, worked out well for Zoro. Kind of took a calculated risk, and it's going to pay off. The Mysterious Challenger doesn't grab too many Secrets, I believe. We see that the Avenge is not playable, so it won't grab that. And that's the second Avenge, obviously. So Mysterious Challenger probably draws, I want to say, 1 Secret here?
Yeah, also Redemption is highlighted, but there's probably only a 1 of in this deck, so yeah, you're right, 1 Secret.
Alright, and we've already seen Repentance, so that's probably going to be the Avenge Redemption, the second Redemption from the deck, I think, and the Noble Sacrifice. So yeah, this is one of these situations that you can find yourself in as Reno Jackson. That actually does come into the hand, which is pretty good for Firebat in general, but when he plays it, he's going to be taking a lot of damage after that, if he does decide to play it right now.
Right, just the situation we were describing. Yes, you can play Reno Jackson heal for 19 here, but then you're just getting 20 into the face anyway.
Yeah, so it looks like he's not going to go for that, I believe. He's probably going to go for Shadow Flame, and
yeah, that looks like... Yeah, there's no Secrets on the board, so that actually is going to be a pretty full board clear with Jiraxis coming on the field.
Yeah, that was really well done by Firebat, and obviously, and like we were saying, I mean, if he had played the Reno Jackson, as we see the Noble Sacrifice come on the field, Reno Jackson would have just kind of been a waste because you just kind of take the damage back. So Firebat going for the board clear first, and then going for potentially Reno Jackson. Do you think he plays greedy here and doesn't play it again?
Doesn't play the which card?
The
Redemption?
Reno Jackson. Speaking of Firebat, sorry.
Yeah, so I think, Firebat basically has to deal with this board or heal at this point, and he's going to first see if he can clear the board, because obviously a Blessing of Kings here is lethal. Blessing of Kings plus Owl against the taunt would be lethal here. I don't think he can just willy-nilly, for example, play the Dr. Boom.
Yeah, what if you go for something just kind of in between play, just play the heal bot? Because a lot of times it's kind of how much greed can you, how greedy can you be is sometimes the, how you win games in these high stakes environments. But you know, Reno Jackson is a pretty big body, bigger than the heal bot, so I think you might go for it anyway.
Right, it's just an overall stronger body, and not only that, but you're gonna heal for 12, or sorry, for 22, and I don't think you can hope to heal for any more than that, or you can't be that greedy.
Right. And gets a free quote-unquote tap, at least health-wise, though he does has to use the coin in order to get the Reno Jackson out, which kind of somewhat limits his plays going forward. Zoro just kind of gonna hit the face right now. Really no reason to be clearing Reno. And no Owl in the hand of Firebat. He hasn't used an Owl this game, has he?
No, he owled
a mini bot.
A shielded mini bot in the first game, I believe.
Yeah. So let's see. What are Firebat's options for this turn? Has the Sylvanas? Can play that, though he is facing down 12 damage, which is half of his life total. I mean, obviously the Sylvanas is pretty scary, but you know, Zoro can just kind of smork it and hope. You know, that is something that he could go for and just get so much damage onto Firebat that it's unrecoverable.
Yeah, one of the possibly unforeseen weaknesses of Reno Jackson is your opponent knows you have a one of every card in your deck pretty much. So now that Zoro has seen a Shadow Flame, for instance, he doesn't have to play around Shadow Flame anymore. He can play more towards the AoE. Normally when you're playing even Lotheb into this board, you're kind of a little afraid of Shadow Flame because that will just wreck you on that Sylvanas.
Yeah, definitely. And so I don't think he played this Lotheb because it discourages spells, which is a thing. I mean, it might help as it's taking away one spell from Firebat right now, but more so he just wants the biggest body possible, and basically saying even if Sylvanas takes a big body here, I'm going to have more big bodies to be able to finish out the game, and he has to Holy Consecrate as well.
Yeah, it does. It does hurt. For example, now Firebat is discouraged from playing Immortal Coil on that 2/1. He can't really Dark Bomb anything, but overall, generally, I think it's mostly for the pressure that he's putting on. And Lotheb, it's an average steal. Yeah, a very average steal.
Maybe in the middle, right? As far as
maybe you would want the Shredder more, but overall, just not a huge deal, I feel.
Yeah, and Firebat's going to have to make something happen. I guess the Dark Peddler, looks like we have a shot of that. Corruption's not going to do anything. Probably going to be the Abusive Sergeant for its utility. And yeah, Healbot as well as the Abusive Sergeant. Going to take out Tyrion. But is there... How much damage do we have on the side of Zoro after all this is said and done?
17 damage.
You're much better at math than I am. But 17 plus the 2 from the hand, right?
Right, so just one off lethal once again.
So I guess the other question is, how much healing does Zoro think Firebat has right here? I think he has a Farseer in his deck, and that's it. So could he just go face here? Because I don't think Firebat has any way to kill Zoro if Zoro just goes face here.
Right. If you just think about the potential cards that he could have in his deck, there's maybe a Farseer left, maybe a Refreshment Vendor, and maybe some taunts. But beyond that, I don't really see anything. Milganis is also an option, but I don't think that's really going to do much against this board when you've already locked up 9 of your mana. So this feels really safe. This feels really good. I don't really think there's a way that Firebat can get out of this right now.
Yeah,
he can't even tap. So putting Firebat at 1 is even more valuable.
Yeah, exactly. Zoro taking a bit of a chance here that Firebat doesn't have some sort of big taunt. A clear than a taunt somehow, because obviously he has used his equality consecrate, but pretty, it's not that much of a risk, right? What can Firebat reasonably do here? And the answer is nothing. But Zoro's going to take his first game here, and games actually do matter in the grand scheme of things, as because of the tiebreakers. How the standings are determined is first by match win-loss, so obviously, winning the entire series would be good. But after that, it goes to game win-loss difference. So every game that Zoro can pick up here, even if he drops a series, is important. In any case, does pick up the game with that Paladin. Now he's left with Reno, Warlock, and Combo Druid, whereas Firebat obviously has that Reno Warlock left.
Yeah, do have to favor again the combo druid versus the Reno Warlock, because again the combo druid, it doesn't really care too much about Reno Jackson. It doesn't really care too much about him healing for maybe 20 damage, because he's gonna win before that with Force Nature, Savage War, plus some kind of board. But I'm really interested to see the Reno Mirror. This is actually a matchup that I haven't yet been able to see in competitive play. So I'm honestly hoping that Firebat takes one for the team. He loses this match, and then we can see a good old-fashioned Reno Warlock Mirror. Good old-fashioned, said facetiously, of course.
Yeah, not only that, but going to 5 games would be pretty epic. I've heard some people say they've had trouble defeating Reno Warlock with the combo Druid, however, which kind of, stunned me, obviously. But because, typically combo Warlocks don't do well against Druid at all. But, I mean, they do have so many answers, and just the ability to get out of danger with the huge heal can be something. I want to remind everyone that we are piggybacking on the Chinese feed, so there's a bit of lag here and there because of the... things that are broadcasted from China sometimes, experiences lag when people are trying to watch it from outside of China, so apologies there. But in any case, we have the egg and a couple options here. What do you think is the best here for Firebat?
I think putting up a very solid board here, you really want to really contest the board against the Darnassus Aspirant. I was maybe expecting him to use the Abusive Sergeant there, but I guess he doesn't want to set up for some kind of really amazing swipe turn, for example.
Right. Yeah, it could get his board cleared, and obviously, the 4/4 doesn't. In the end, it wouldn't be too good because you're not really killing the Darnassus Aspirant. But yeah, I was kind of in the same boat as you. I was eyeing that Abusive Sergeant, maybe just get the 4/4 out now and get 2-1 on the board.
I do think it was clear that the one of the 2 drops, probably the Acidic Swamp Ooze, was going to be played, because really need to have some way to pressure that Darnassus Aspirant. And with Firebat's current hand, I don't think he's going to be able to do it in any other way.
All right, with the feed, looks like we had an instant replay right there, in case you guys wanted that. But yeah, it's going to be a tap and likely the Blood Mage Thalnos, as Reno does hit the hand. Not sure if Firebat wants to see that right now. It's just a nice thing to have in your back pocket if you do need to heal for that much, as we see a potential turn 6 combo from Zoro, but likely going to be the Lothap here, I believe.
Yeah, one thing Zoro does have to worry about is kind of here is Demon Wrath, which is found in some Reno Warlock decks, and that just kills off the 3/3 Shade. But fortunately for him, he does have something to contest that, the Lothap in his hand right now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, with the spell damage from that Thalnos, and Firebat obviously would be pretty happy to get rid of his own board in this situation. In order to do that, looks like it's going to be Innervate, Hero Power, not going to keep the option for having that accelerated combo for the future.
Yeah. I'm very curious about that decision, because now there's a lot of cards that he wouldn't be able to activate any of his 7-drops. It really deactivates Lores and Dr. Booms from his next few turns. And also his hand is just looking really not that great right now for a turn 5 play.
Yeah, definitely. He really has no play at all to make. Looks like Firebat's going to... Oh, this is a pretty good play. So now he's going to be able to kill this Shade, which is obviously something that's, pretty much all classes want to be able to do, right? Just get rid of that Shade. as quick as possible. As we see a Thorson, a graphic right there, potentially discount this combo. So Zoro, nothing to do here other than swipe, though swipe isn't the worst. It does get rid of the 4-4, but not much more than that.
Yeah, right. Like we said, this Ancient of War, or this Ancient of War rather, could be played if Zoro didn't throw away the Innervate. And really, the Blood Mage Thanos, I feel like, wasn't really hurting anyone. Because you played Lotheb on the same turn, then your opponent can't really abuse the spell power from the Blood Mage Thanos. But then again, if he didn't innervate the Blood Mage Thanos, or if he didn't innervate the hero power, then he would be kind of have to be worried about this Blood Mage Thanos behind a bunch of taunts. But again, you can just swipe that off.
Right. Yeah, so maybe a bit hasty play there by Zoro, going for the innervate when he didn't really have to. But yeah, this is kind of the worst case scenario for Zoro. Really, nothing to do again. He can get rid of this Sludge Belcher, or the front 2/3 or so of this Sludge Belcher, which I imagine he'll do because it's better than just hero power, not even attacking and then passing. But this is kind of the dream for Firebat, and this could be the second time that Firebat defeats what's you and I think are kind of unfavored matchups, but maybe they aren't as unfavored, as we once thought. Maybe Druid isn't quite as strong as we once thought.
Right, there's just really not that much data going around about especially Reno Warlock matchups, because every Reno Warlock deck is a little different. Not just a little different, but again, wildly different. Probably 10 or 15 cards off from each other.
Yeah, and the good thing about the interesting of that. The interesting thing about that is that it's kind of its own challenge zone, right? Speaking of, hosting on Tempo Storm. But everyone gets to kind of build their own deck, kind of test their deck building skills. How well can you build a deck with only one of, in the deck to make sure you have that Reno go off. But yeah, it really tests the deck building skills. But as for now, it looks like Firebat's done a pretty good job and in dominant position being able to drop this Dr. Boom.
Right. Well, it tests your deck building skills, but it also tests your net decking skills, because you can just always, just go on.
Dr. Boom, Battle Cry, summon 2 Boombots, and make your opponent draw BGH.
Right. Put a BGH in your opponent's hand. I mean, it's all really not that great for Zoro. He plays BGH, and then what? He kind of again concedes the board with really nothing to do besides hero power. Perhaps fitting in a walled growth, but honestly, the walled growth isn't even going to do much here.
Yeah. So obviously, it looks like Zoro, after this kind of subpar turn, what do you think Firebat's going to do? Do you think there is potential for a Tempo Reno here?
Well, I think definitely a life tap is going to be used.
Unless he gets a big 8-drop, obviously.
Yeah, unless he gets something big, then he's going to life tap, and then he's going to consider everything. But if he just draws
Thorison's
dead...
big, yeah. Thorison's a big card. Okay, never mind.
That's pretty amazing.
I really wanted to see if he would do that, to go for the Tempo Reno, because obviously, I mean, Healbot does basically the same thing, right? Except Reno's just bigger. But
yeah, I definitely think you can consider it if you have all situational cards. A 4/6 is a pretty big body. It's like kind of almost like a 5 statted minion. 5 mana cost statted minion.
With yeah, obviously that, I mean, and you see that all the time, right? Sometimes you just kind of have to play, the card naked, so to speak, just to get that value out. Zoro with a pretty tough turn here. He could go for the Sylvanas and maybe, I don't know, just hit the face, just to like, for instance, what if Firebat tries to go for the trade with both of them, but somehow kills the Sylvanas? Looks like it's not going to be the case. It's going to be the Ancient of War to be able to contest this Thorson a lot better. And Zoro does have lethal if Firebat doesn't deal with this and doesn't heal. And doesn't play Mal'Ganis and doesn't play Lotheb.
Right, so basically, as long as Firebat doesn't play half the cards in his hand right now, then Zoro wins.
Right. There's a hope. There's hope for Zoro here. But so there is Doomguard there.
Or Doomguard. Even Doomguard clears this.
So he has to just play Tempo BGH and Zombie Chow.
And maybe Dark Bomb, the Ancient of War.
Yeah. That's the only way that Firebat dies here. But looks like it's going to be Lotheb. Just kind of contest the board a bit. Play the Zombie Chow as well, because he doesn't really care about his opponent's health. And yeah, no real way for Zoro to do anything here as far as trying to lethal the opponent. Though he does get a pretty beefy minion there, and a good minion to be able to reduce that combo, the combo cost. And if he picks up a Savage Roar after this, he can double combo.
Right. One more turn of Emperor Thor's and Firebat will have his own combo of Melganis Doomguard, Dark Bomb, and
BJ's just in case.
right, BJ's just in case. Kill your own Doomguard, for instance, and you do a 10 damage combo to your opponent's face.
Yeah, that would be pretty insane. But yeah, a lot of kind of interesting cards in Firebat's hand. Has some situational cards and some healing cards. Obviously, the healing is pretty nice right now. Let's see, what's the damage with combo here from Zoro? It's 21 plus 7, so 28. So if there's a Reno here, then Firebat doesn't die to one combo. Probably going to see Firebat just clear here. It looks like give up that Thorson. He's gotten enough discounts already. Use that Dark Bomb, clear out the Sylvanas. So this is a pretty good situation for here. We might see him go for... I'd like to see just a Reno and a Shredder. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. You don't really need to be that greedy and fit in a tap, but okay. It really doesn't matter at this point, to be honest.
Oh, what is he doing?
Oh, is he gonna... He's thinking of... He's gonna Shredder and Healbot instead.
Oh, right. So, yeah, just wanting to get that extra card in and realizing that at 18 health he's fine, unless his opponent perfectly has, Force, Roar, Innervate or something like that, and then he draws the other one. So instead going to be Melganis, which is, obviously he's at 17 health, quote-unquote, which means he's not going to die to any sort of combo. Zoro has no way to kill it other than using his combo. So, the end... Sorry, go ahead.
Firebat did this because he realized his opponent played his BGH, probably doesn't have another BGH. But then again, has Firebat seen double Innervate already? Because I feel like if he went for the line of play that went for Reno and Piloteur, then he has no way to lose this game. Whereas with this line of play, if Zoro had the double combo, I think he wins the game if he has double combo because the hero power and one tree goes into the Melganis, and the other two trees go into Firebat's face.
Yeah, he has seen one Innervate. He hasn't seen both, I don't believe. But I think it's just kind of him wanting to be as greedy as possible. Maybe tapping, just getting more options in hand, like you see the Void Caller right now. And so I imagine we're probably going to see, double 4-drop here. Going to be the Reno, free tap, so to speak. And clear off this Thorson so you don't have to deal with it anymore. And obviously going to get that Void Caller out. Could be the Void Caller or the Shredder, but obviously Void Caller spawns more or less like a 7-ish drop rather than a 2-drop. So yeah, works out well.
Right, and this is about the point in the game where Zoro probably should concede at this point.
I mean, there's no real need to concede, I don't believe, because obviously we've seen the decks on the screen as well, which is super interesting. And he's not going to be using these decks going forward, obviously, since, in case you guys didn't know and you weren't here at the beginning of the broadcast, they are going to be using all 9 classes. So, I mean, this information doesn't really matter. I believe he's just going to, play it out, see if he can pull some sort of miracle win.
So, with that miracle win, what can Zoro even draw in the following turns, and what does he have to do right now and to secure that miracle win?
I think he has to... Right now, I think... I think you just go face here. Just swipe the face, and then hero power face. Hope you draw a big minion. Oh, he's gonna kill the Melganis. Okay. Yeah, it's just sacrificing some health to get the big out of the field. So he has, a few turns to work with. And then from there... let's say Firebat does nothing and he just kind of goes face for some strange reason and Zoro picks up the second Savage Roar, then he has lethal. I imagine since it's gone picked off, looks like he wants to get a big card and then but then there's Sylvanas. I don't know. Every time I try to say something that works, it just
right.
Oh, there's Sylvanas, never mind.
Wait, Firebat's not playing around mind control tech. So assuming that Zoro got mind control tech and he stole the best card, which is probably Sylvanas, then does he have a chance? Then there's still 10 damage on board. I guess Firebat doesn't have a lot of burst. Although we do see that Firebat actually does have 9 damage burst from hand.
Yeah,
So
he
even
does.
that loses.
He does have quite a bit of burst. I think Zoro's best chance here is to go for the 1 in 70 or whatever it is, Doomsayer, and then just try to get a board after that and chip away. I think that's honestly his best chance.
Right. And how do you do that? Do you use your Savage Roar, or do you go for the Force of Nature?
I think you. Oh, that's right, because he already used one force, so he.
Right.
I think you
This
go for
this
the force and just try to get a big board later or some sort of board.
okay.
Yeah, just because you don't want to be. I don't think you can take the damage, really, because once you get your minions on the board and Firebat has his own minions, you don't want to be trading. Anyway, you want to be going face, and if you're down to 13 health at that point, it could be a problem. But that's neither here nor there. Zoro's going to do neither. And I think
Right.
Firebat has enough damage to finish out the game right here.
Oh, definitely. So Firebat has 2 damage off lethal on board. So he just needs 1 burn spell.
Play the Dark Peddler.
Yeah, it's really Dark Peddler. Go for the BM.
Alright, so that's going to be it. So regardless of how Firebat does it, deciding he does go for the Dark Peddler. I hope they show it. I guess they power whelming.
Oh, misplay.
Misplay. Oh, and he discards the power whelming. But maximum BM and
Yeah,
look right
Zero's
there.
not going to stand for this.
Okay. Alright, there we go. Firebat picks up the win. Zoro not too happy about it, obviously. And as far as game scores are concerned, Firebat now is +2 on the day with that 3-1 victory, and Zoro is -2. So that could come into play later on the day.